You're doing everything right. You're eating clean, you're walking 5 days a week, you're drinking water, tracking your meals like it's a part-time job. And then one morning you step on that scale and it was up again, again. So at this point, you just sit at the edge of your bed and tears begin to roll down your cheek. You know, no matter what you do, you're noticing this weight is just creeping up and up and up. Now, the tears are rolling down your cheek, but it's not only because of the number on that scale, but because you just start to feel like a stranger in your own body and you have no idea why. You're not alone. Thousands of women today are going through the same thing, right? Like one of the ladies I met recently, her name is Linda. So Linda, she's 49, a VP at a marketing firm. She's also a mom of two. So she's a woman, she has navigated every curveball in her career and in her family and anything that they've thrown at it. She's been able to navigate that with grace and with power, and most importantly for her, with control. But this right here is starting to feel uncontrollable. And that is the most terrifying part for her. So if any of Linda's story sounds familiar, you're exactly in the right place. Welcome to Menopause Stories. This is the podcast for high-achieving women who refuse to just push through. I'm Dr. Tamara Beckford, and today we're diving into one of the most common and most misunderstood symptoms of menopause and perimenopause, and that is weight gain. Not the kind that you can fix with willpower, the kind that happens on that hormonal level. It's deep inside your body, and often it happens before you even realize that you've crossed into this zone of perimenopause. Today, I'm going to walk you through the top 5 reasons this happens, because once you understand the why, everything changes. And I'm going to give you real actionable steps for each one. Stay with me, guys. I know. But here, reason number 5, you really want to stay until you hear that, because that's one of those that most doctors never even bring it up. And it might be one of the most important of all. Alrighty. So let's deep dive into reason number 1. The big hormonal shift that kicks everything off. And that is the estrogen decline. So the estrogen decline starts to change where your body stores its fat. Here's one thing most women don't know. Estrogen actually plays a role in fat distribution. When you're in your reproductive years, estrogen encourages your body to store fat in the hips and the thighs. Yes, now it makes sense when we think about it, right? That pear shape that most of us have spent our years wishing was very different. It really was because of estrogen, and estrogen did it intentionally. So it was partially to protect us in the fertility process. But when estrogen level starts to drop, and when we think about that starts happening in our late 30s, that's well before your last period, by the way, ladies, your body starts to shift where it's storing its strategically where it's storing its fat, right? So it starts shifting that in that late part of the 30s. Now, a lot of us, we're still like exercising, you're still moving around, so you're still able to energy in and output, you're getting the results. Mid 30s, you're like, okay, I'm going to ramp it up in the gym. I'm going to do the calorie counting, and you might still get results there. You still got a bunch of estrogen working on your side. So you might notice that you're getting results there in your 30s. But then once you hit your 40s and even in your 50s, you start to notice things change, right? Suddenly fat starts accumulating, not just around the hips, but around that midsection, your waist, your abdomen, your belly. You're like, okay. And now it's not willpower. So you're putting in that energy and caloric restriction, but you're not seeing the same results that you did back when you were in your early 30s, especially in the 20s. And then you start thinking, is this is about willpower? But no, that's not correct. This is about biology. And here's what makes it even more frustrating. This visceral fat, which is the fat that we're not even seeing. We are seeing the external fat, but there's another layer that's a visceral fat that's around your organs. It's metabolically active. What does that mean? It means that it's not just sitting there. It's actually increasing inflammation. It's disrupting your insulin sensitivity, and it's increasing your risk of cardiovascular diseases. Now, what is it that we can do? Because it's like, thank you, Dr. Beckford. You've just stressed me out even more talking about this visceral fat. What is it that I can do about this? Okay. First, strength training. So I know that you've heard this before, but I want to really tell you why it really matters specifically here. Now, when we think about the exercise, we usually, I don't know if you guys remember, we'd like, okay, well, I'll just go running a little bit more and we're doing more cardio. We're like ramping up our cardio, especially in our mid 20s, our early 30s. The cardio was able to get you some of the results. But once we hit those late 30s, the 40s, the 50s, and above, we need to really, cardio alone is not going to cut it. Let's just put it like that. And cardio, yes, it's important, but we need to build those muscles. Now, don't hear what I didn't say. I'm not saying that if you're in your 20s and your early 30s that you should not be doing strength training. Yes, you should be, but it's even more important when you're in that perimenopause and menopause period. Why? Because the muscle burns more calories at rest than the fat tissue does. And as our estrogen drops, we naturally lose muscle mass. When you're losing muscle mass, if the muscles burn more calories than fat does, and we lose our muscle mass, that means our metabolism starts to slow down. So lifting weights literally counteracts this process, right? So talk to your provider about where you can increase, or even a fitness professional, but it's also important to talk to your provider about this hormonal intervention that can be done during that time. Why? Because there's evidence-based personal care that shows that when you can use the hormonal, such as testosterone, because that's one of those hormones that we start to lose, estrogen also, the estrogen level goes down. If we start to replace our estrogen, you are literally doing some preventative care right now, right? So it's not just like, okay, well, I want to be on hormone replacement therapy because it is the thing out and everybody's talking about it and it's trending. We're really talking about preventative care right now. So when you talk to your trusted professional, or if you're in the areas where we at Truly Balanced Wellness Care, we practice, then you can come to us. And this is one of the things that we address there. So we'll touch on more than just, how we can do that in this episode. But it's important that you understand that our estrogen decline, it's not just something that's like, okay, we should ignore it. There are factors that happens during this estrogen decline that we should address, because it does more of a prevention for later things such as cardiovascular risk prevention that we just talked about, right? So muscle mass starts to go down as estrogen starts to decline. Now, I want you to really think about this. If estrogen is the trigger of weight gain, there's another thing that's going on. Cortisol is that gasoline that's pouring onto that fire. And cortisol is reason number 2 that's causing this weight gain. So let's talk about cortisol and your chronic stress. It's interesting that I met someone yesterday and, they asked, what is it that I do? I told them and they were like, how can I get my cortisol levels down? I said, girl, you and everybody else, because the stress that everyone is under right now, there's so much increase in cortisol in a lot of us in our day-to-day life, right? So your stress hormones are working against you, ladies. They are working against you. So high achieving women, I'm talking directly to you and to that lady that stopped me in the airport, are one of the particularly set subset of our society that are vulnerable to this. Cortisol is your body's primary stress hormone. And in healthy amount, it helps, to wake you up. It helps you tackle those challenges. You're like, okay, that last minute thing, those of us who are like, you know, procrastinators, not saying that that's you, but you might feel like you get a little bit more energy later on when it counts at that edge of the deadline. You tackle those challenges and you respond to those emergencies. But when it is chronically elevated, which is what happens to a lot of us when you're juggling careers, your families, your aging parents, and now you're also dealing with your own hormonal shift, it becomes a problem. So here's what cortisol does to your body in perimenopause. It starts to signal your body to store fat, especially in the abdomen. Now, we just talked about that estrogen decline has you storing fat in the abdomen area. And in addition to that, the increased cortisol has you storing fat. So you can see how you have two things that's going against you right now during this period of your life, right? So we have the increased cortisol having you storing fat specifically around the abdomen. And then it also increases your appetite. Or what types of food do you think it's increasing your appetite for more vegetables and more lean protein? No, no, no. It's increasing our fat for high sugar, high fat comfort foods. And it also disrupts our sleep. And it also disrupting your sleep means that your cortisol level stays high. And then we can see this vicious cycle that's going on and on, right? So many people are going through this right now. I'm like, oh my gosh, my cortisol level is through the roof. But here's the kicker. Estrogen actually helps to modulate your cortisol. So as an estrogen level drops, your stress response becomes less buffered. And then you use that, you can see how that starts to roll into increasing your levels of stress. So your stress level goes up, your estrogen level is down, causing your stress level to go up, causing your cortisol level to go up. Your estrogen level is continually dropping as you age, and you can see all these stressors are going up. Cortisol level is going up, body is storing more fat around, especially the abdominal area, and your body starts to change its shape. Now, what's going on? It's literally your body's biochemistry. So this is not a weakness that you have. This is something that's literally biologically going to happen to you and your body. And you will see a change in the distribution of the fat that is naturally on you. So even those who are thin, naturally thin, you'll see that distribution that changes because it's chemistry, it's biology, it's literally how we are evolving as we get older. Now, what is it that we can do? Cortisol management is not about just doing less. It's about being strategic, particularly doing things like that will decrease your cortisol level. A lot of people are like, how can I get these cortisol levels down? Here are some things that you can do. You can be strategic about it, right? You can practice yoga, which can help to reduce the stress internally and bring the mind down. Even breath work, 10 minutes a day walking, it can really be measured, it can measurably actually bring down that cortisol level. So yoga, things that calm you down, right? Things that bring you away from the external stressors of life. Things that brings you down to the level where you're thinking and you're slowing down rushed day-to-day existence that you're having. Just really taking those deep breaths in and releasing them. Doing that for even 10 minutes a day can measurably reduce your cortisol levels. Now, we do have other things that people have tried, like adaptogens like ashwagandha. They have been showing to help to reduce some stress levels, but you also have to be careful because they do have side effects, such as liver toxicity. So if you are taking any of those supplements, make sure that you're doing that under the guidance of a physician or a practitioner or someone that can measure your lab levels. I don't want you going into reducing the stress on one hand and end up in liver failure on the other. Definitely not cool, right? But here's another thing that's important: sleep. Sleep is one of the most powerful cortisol regulators that's there. And guess what we try to do? We have been avoiding sleep like the plague, right? But getting into a good sleep routine is so important to helping to reduce your stress levels. And I know some of this is easier said than done, but it does not have to be 100% change. Changing even 10% a week, going decreasing the stimulation that you have at the end of the day, being able to reduce the blue light right before you're going to sleep. So that's looking at your phone, watching TV, but bringing that stress level down and getting a comfortable sleep is something that's important that you can do in order to improve not just your cortisol level, but help to reduce the excess weight that's coming on. So here's what I want you to understand. Stress doesn't affect just your waistline directly. It destroys your sleep. And poor sleep, like I said, is a devastating thing on its own on your weight. And so you don't want to get down that rabbit hole. So you definitely want to make sure that sleep is something that you're taking into consideration to reduce your cortisol. But here's this other thing about sleep. Sleep disrupts your hunger hormone. Oh my God. So how many of you have noticed that if you're up late at night and you're just starting to want more snacks, right? Because bad sleep rewires your hunger. And this is what's going on. If you're in perimenopause or even menopause, there's a good chance that you're not getting that much sleep. Or if you are going to sleep, you're tossing and turning. You're probably having that night sweats, or you're waking up at 3 a.m. in the morning and your mind is just not, you just cannot calm it down, right? You're either having insomnia or you're just having racing thoughts over things that just makes no sense. Like, why am I trying to figure this out at 3 a.m. in the morning when I know I need to get up by 6 in order to start my day, da 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 da. But here's what most women don't realize: that poor sleep does something to your appetite as well. Yeah. So when you sleep less than 7 hours, two things starts to happen. The ghrelin, which is one of your hunger hormones, starts to rev up and you feel hungrier and you're hungrier than usual, right? Especially for like calorie dense food like we talked about. It's not like during that time you're like, okay, let me eat some broccoli. That's not what you're going to be feeling for. You want that ice cream and those comfort foods. Leptin, which is your satiated hormone, it starts to go down. So your body is no longer saying like, okay, I feel good. It's just like that signal gets turned off and you're just eating. So when you start to eat more and you're eating more food that are calorie dense, and a lot of that are usually carb related food that's not really bringing a lot of nutrients in, and you're just eating more and more of it, you start to see some of the changes in your body. So you're feeling less full, you're having less energy, and your willpower to eat the healthier food starts to go down. And this is on top of the fact that we just talked about. Estrogen starts going down and your cortisol is spiking. So now we can see why the scale starts going up, right? So you have like 3 things going on against you at once right now. What is it that we can do? All right, so sleep hygiene matters. We talked about that. Cool in the bedroom for some people, like 6 to 8 degrees for them. For me, I'm from Jamaica. 6 to 8 degrees is just too cold. But I can't keep it a little cooler than my normal mid-70s so that you can get a good night rest, right? Some people even do cooling blankets. Trying to develop a consistent schedule is something that you can bring the body into that. The body actually likes schedule, but I am one that I can completely understand if this is a challenge for you. Me, for many years, I work as an emergency medicine physician. So those of us who work on shift work, where you're up, down, your night is day and day is night for everyone, you can understand how challenging that is on our body and how challenging it is for us to be consistent with sleep. But trying to have a consistent schedule is something that you should yearn towards in order to really help the body. We talked about limiting the screen time and also doing things that can improve your quality of sleep. If you're having hot flashes as your primary disruptor, this is where hormonal therapy can help. There are also some non-hormonal options. Some are like some antidepressants, and we also have, that they use at low doses. And we also have other medications that are non-hormonal that can help with what we call the vasovagal symptoms of menopause. Um, those, if you're having hot flashes as disruptor, talk to your healthcare provider to be able to get that on board so that you can get the quality rest, so that you can be able to leave leave your sleep nights or at night or wake up in the morning, however you want to describe it, where you're feeling that you've had like a great rest and you're ready to tackle the day. You're not, entering like, oh gosh, another night that I barely slept and I have so much to do. So I want you to really, really think about this. Let's go over some of the stuff that we've already covered. So we talked about estrogen, we talked about cortisol and sleep, and I want to keep moving because reason number 4 is one of those things that catches even the health savvy woman. It catches her off guard. And it has to do with your insulin, your blood sugar, and why your carbs are hitting differently than it used to. So reason number 4 is this insulin resistance that starts happening. Now, your cells, they're becoming a little bit more resistant to insulin as we get older. Now, no one wants to hear the word older, but I mean, hey, seasoned, experienced, matured, fill in the gap, whichever one fits you. But let's just talk about it. This is a big one. As we get older, our cells become more resistant to insulin, right? And insulin resistance is one of those big underdiagnosed issues that happen in our menopausal women. So insulin is a hormone it's what it does. It moves sugar from the bloodstream into the cells. So the cells uses that sugar for energy. Now, in a healthy, balanced system, it works beautifully, right? But estrogen, that's our girl. Yes, she plays a huge role in this. And what she does is she allows the cells to be sensitive to insulin. And what that means is that when she's around estrogen, the cells will take up that sugar, have it inside of the cell and not outside in the bloodstream, but in the cell in order to use it for energy. When the cells are insulin resistant, there's less of that sugar going into the cell and most of it is staying in the bloodstream, right? So as estrogen drops, your cells become resistant to the insulin. So you are now at that phase where most of the sugar is staying in the bloodstream, it's circulating. And then what is your body going to do? Okay, let me pull that up as fat. It's storing it as fat. And especially where? Right around that abdomen. So this is why so many women notice that they can't tolerate carbs the way they used to. That pasta that they never touched or never had to worry about at 35 can go straight to the belly at 48. And it's not in your head. If you were like, oh my gosh, if I look at something carb related, I gain 5 pounds. Yes, ma'am. That's true. Because our body has now become more resistant to insulin. So what is it that we can do? We can prioritize protein with every meal. Protein, and one of my colleagues too, you might have heard of her, she helps, in addition, she has put out information about that. And you've probably read many places on how to eat a meal. It's like, you have an order and how to eat it so that your body can maximize how it's using each calorie and each of the different parts of a meal to best increase your energy and to reduce the insulin resistance. So this is one way to do that. You prioritize protein at every meal. So the protein, it blunts the sugar response and it keeps you fuller longer. You also start to reduce the refined carbohydrates and added sugar. Now, here's the thing. Carbohydrates are needed. Sugar is needed. Remember we talked about sugar, right? What is the first thing that we said that sugar does? Sugar is brought into the cell and the cell uses it as energy. So it's not to say that you are sugar free, but you just have to be strategic about it. And also, you have refined sugars versus you have ones that are naturally um, found within our foods, right? So you can have the cake, that's sugar, but you can have sweet potatoes. It also has carbohydrates that's broken down into sugar. So you just have to be a little bit more strategic. And then the next thing is after you eat your meal, movement right after a meal helps to improve how the body takes up that glucose and it stores it into the muscles. So we help with movement. So you have the carbohydrate low meal, higher in protein, start with the protein. First bite, start with the protein. And then after you finish your meal, start to move at least 10 minutes a day. Help, but after the meal will help you. And then it's also important for you to know where you are. So when you go to your doctor or your provider, make sure that you're getting a blood test, not just the glucose test. You could also get tested for insulin resistance. You can get tested for hemoglobin A1C to see where you are over the last 3 months. Has your body been processing and pulling that sugar into the cells, or has it been just hanging around in the bloodstream? All of this is very important, right? Now, I know. I know you have sat and you've listened or you've driven and listened. And I did promise you reason number 5, which is one of the most things that doctors may not even have talked about, but it's really important. So we are almost here. But first, I want to say something that's very important. I want to say that to every patient who sits across from me and feel defeated, you've not failed. Your body is not broken. You're not lazy, you're not undisciplined, and you're not letting yourself go. You're experiencing a massive hormonal shift, ladies, one that affects every system in your body. And you've been doing it largely without the right information. So Linda, the lady that I talked about earlier at the top of this episode, she came, to our practice, and she's really been feeling this sense of loneliness. But you don't have to feel like that. When you are treated, and when I say treated, I mean being cared for in your whole self as an experience, such as getting the right labs, getting the right hormones, getting the right strategy, you too can lose the weight. She's lost 14 pounds. I've had patients who have been with me on this weight loss journey, lost 30, 40 pounds. You can do this. But most importantly, it's not only the weight loss, it's just that feeling that you are now feeling like yourself again. And that's what she says. A lot of women are like, I just start to feel like myself again. And that's what it's all about. It's not about the number on the scale. It's not about getting back into that dress. Those are all byproducts. But the feeling like yourself, getting back to you, the you that you know, that vibrant person that started to get lost, that's what it's about. Okay? Alrighty. So now let's talk about reason number 5, muscle loss. The medical term for that is sarcopenia. So as you get older, wiser, more mature, more experienced, whichever one we want to use to describe ourselves, you start to lose muscle and it starts to slow down your metabolism. So sarcopenia, as I said, is the medical term for age-related muscle loss. And in women, it accelerates dramatically in menopause. And here's why it matters so much, especially for our weight. Muscle is metabolically expensive. Like muscle is metabolically expensive. And your body, it burns significantly more calories in a pound of muscle than it does in a pound of fat. So as your muscle mass decreases, your resting metabolic rate decreases. And the number of calories you burn just sitting, it drops, right? So you can eat the exact same amount that you did at 40 and gain weight at 50, simply because your metabolism has slowed down. I know it's not fair, but that's just what happens. And it's not because of anything you did wrong. It's just that your muscle has declined. And of course, we talked about that at the beginning. As your estrogen declines, so does your muscle. So here's the most important part that's just not mentioned is that this process is reversible. Yes, it's reversible. Now, what is it that we can do in order to reverse some of this muscle loss, which is the sarcopenia? It's resistant training. 3 to 4 times a day, it's been evidence-based that you can intervene this sarcopenia with resistant training. The biggest thing is that I don't want anybody to think that I need to go out there and start CrossFitting for life. It doesn't have to be that extreme, right? You don't have to train like you're about to prepare for the next Olympics. But what you do need is progressive overload. And that's gradually challenging your muscles over time. We talked about protein intake. So protein are the building blocks of muscles. So protein intake is also important. But most importantly, we need to remember that menopausal women, we at times eat far too little protein. And protein is the building block of some of our muscles. It's a building block of that. So we need to aim for at least 0.7 to 1 gram of protein per body weight daily. And creatine, yes, creatine, we can also supplement that within our diet. It's shown to be able to support muscle preservation in women, especially over 45. Now, all of this, I want you to do that pairing being seen by your professional, right? I don't want you overloading on creatine and damaging your self, but it is important to add that as a part of your routine so that you can preserve these muscles because, ladies, we're going to need them. As we get more mature, older, wiser, dependent, you can fill in the blank, whichever one you use to describe yourself, right? So we've gone through those 5 reasons, we've gone through the 5 strategies, but what I want to leave you with right now is one thing that ties it all together. Because information without a path forward is just frustration. So stay with me for the next 2 minutes, right? Let's bring it together. So the top 5 reasons menopause women gain weight is number 1, estrogen drops and the fat redistributes to your belly. Number 2, cortisol rises and drives abdominal fat storage. Number 3, sleep disruption rewires our hunger and hormones. Number 4, insulin resistance make your body stores more fat and it does it aggressively. Number 5, muscle loss slows down our metabolism at the root, at the base. None of these are your fault, and all of these are addressable with the right support. That's exactly the kind of work we do every day at Truly Balanced Wellness Care. We are a telemedicine practice built specifically for women navigating perimenopause and menopause. And we look at the whole picture, your labs, your hormones, your lifestyle, and your history. Because you deserve more than someone handing you a pamphlet and telling you eat less and move more, right? So if you're ready to stop guessing and start getting answers, visit us at www.trulybalancedwc.com. We offer virtual appointments, which means that you can access care from wherever you are. And mention Menopause Stories podcast when you book. Would love to know where you found us. And to every woman listening, I want to thank you for being here. Thank you for seeking this information, for advocating for yourself, for refusing to accept that this is just part of getting old. This is the part of the transition, but it does not have to be a part of your life that has to be permanent, right? You do not have to sit in that discomfort and just let it happen. You can continue taking charge of your life. So until next time, take care of yourself because you know what? You deserve it.